Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Love Talks. I'm thrilled to share tonight's guest with you, Bill Clum. And if you're not familiar with Love Talks is a conversation that I host monthly where I bring in industry experts to share their wisdom to help you deepen, awaken, and expand your romantic life. Bill is coming to us from, are you in San Diego, Bill?
Yes, San Diego.
Yeah, fantastic. And I'll share a little bit of Bill's background for those of you that are not familiar with his work. And then I'll let Bill expand on sort of his background and wisdom before we dive into tonight's conversation. So Bill has over 30 years working in the modality of religion and spirituality. It's led him to be a mentor, a catalyst of awakening for others, and a healer. He has studied relentlessly, finding his way alongside many gifted teachers. He has gained the appreciation for and developed skills across several modalities, beliefs, techniques, and practices. Bill holds certifications as a professional intuitive, a Chakra Reiki Do Master, energetic alchemy practitioner, and a Universal Ministries spiritual minister. Bill, I came to know you through my dear friend Jill Prescott, and she, of course, has worked with you and your wife, Patricia, with Evolution of the Heart. And I know the power of your experience and wisdom. Can you share with everyone that's listening tonight a little bit more of your journey to what's brought you to the work that you're doing now?
Well, just in the beginning of a course, like many of us, we're seeking something to move through, the experience of pain here on the planet. None of us seem to be able to escape that, although the earth and many things are quite beautiful. My flight was really to discover myself and to find what makes me work inside. And just in the last 10 years, what I discovered was the realm of the heart. And that's what my wife and myself have focused on is the heart. We have the ability, through the soul to see, to gather information. And information alone won't do it. So I was saying I have lots of information. So where is the heart in this matter? And as the heart in my life began to open through that experience, I was able to integrate what I was seeing and what I was reading and studying and the information that came to me. And through that information, as I began to write and to open my heart, a lot of what we teach has come through our writings.
Wonderful.
So we're a heart-based company.
Yes, you sure are. I've had the pleasure of attending several of your evening of meditation, and I'm always delighted by not only what I experience, but being in community as other people do this important heart work. So tonight we're talking about reactionship to relationship. And I'd like to offer an invitation to anyone that's watching this evening. And I see some of you are on, so say hello and who you are and where you're coming from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you have questions, please don't hesitate in posting them and we'll address them as they come up throughout the talk. We're going to be speaking until about 8 o'clock tonight. So our conversation, as I said, is about reactionship to relationship, but let's give context to that. Can you share what reactionship means to you, Bill?
Well, what I've noticed is that in the masculine, feminine energies, we're always trying to relate somehow. And what I've noticed is that, women basically socialize a lot with women, and when they come into a relationship with a man, have a tendency to bring man in as if the man was a woman, and vice versa, the men do the same thing. And so there's a little bit of a gap, whereas I've noticed that women have a lot of big range of emotion where men have less range of emotion. So what I've noticed is women go into emotion, men are so unfamiliar with the range of emotion that their significant other may have. And in my experience, I wanted that to quiet down, and little did I know, that was my opportunity actually to experience a deeper connection. And so in the place that on our planet, we're still transitioning from the mind. So we relate to the mind as a mathematical equation. If I give her or him this or that, then I'll receive this. Therefore, the disappointment, it's a setup for disappointment because it's really not a relating from the deepest part of us, which is our heart.
It's more transactional.
Right. And so with, you know, we all bring something related to our parental experience. And so we'll treat another as if we're the parent, the mother, or the father. So in that place, it's hard to relate because we're still working out our parental issues. So that can come into play into the relationship. And so on familiar ground, you may respond like one of your parents did, and it becomes a reactionship. And it becomes it very quickly when the mind feels that it did not get what it thought that it was getting or was going to receive. It's quite the opposite at times.
Yes. So can you provide some examples of what being in reactionship might look or feel like?
Well, okay, in relationship, when we're not necessarily feeling like we're getting what we want, I'll just speak of myself and my relationship to my wife. I basically, when she would speak to me, I was not able to fully hear her. And also, I didn't necessarily see her or feel her. Mm. So when she was trying to get across a point, I'm kind of a logical person, so the emotional response didn't seem logical. I said, are you going to come from this place of emotion again? I mean, I don't really want to deal with this. It's just way too emotional for me. Well, you never listen to me. You know, you just don't see me. You can't hear me, or you don't hear me. And so that's kind of the setup of the reactionship. And also the need inside also to blame another can create a very strong reactionship.
So it's almost like these people come into our experience and are embodying things that, in a way, in a very nice way of saying it, are an invitation for us to experience maybe the stuff that's unresolved within us. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
So a lot of the time, you know, I fully believe that people come into our experience because we have attracted them there for us to expand and grow. But we don't always have that realization in the day-to-day. It's just something that upsets us, so we feel that we can get trapped in a cycle of having the same experience with each person. So where can someone start to get inquisitive, if they're ready to look, to realize that maybe they're in that experience?
Well, curiosity. You know, because most people that are attracted in relationship, there is an attraction. There's an original state of attraction. It could be love. It could be romantic, infatuation, whatever the attraction is. Underneath that, the backdrop, underneath that, there is love. It's just that getting to that deeper intimacy, that deeper love, sometimes can be difficult. I call it protection. Mm-hmm. When protection goes up over our heart, it's really hard to connect with another. You know, intimacy is a very fine line at times of really being able to. The biggest thing that puts people in the reaction is actually when they're not heard, felt, or seen. Those are the three simple ones. And so whenever that feeling is there, it's really hard to step into a romantic state of being or a very intimate state of being. When somebody is fully heard, felt, and seen, it's a lot easier to relax into a relationship because they're able to express who they are.
How do you create that experience with another person? Is it something that you solely can get from another, or where does that lie?
Oh, that's really a great question. Um, well, I feel that there has to be a commitment to self, because in the place we hear this language many times, you've got to learn to love yourself. So it's actually a reflection. Relationship actually is a very fast track to awareness and awakening. It accelerates the path. And so in the place of when people begin to bump into each other, wow, maybe I need to do this differently, approach this differently, and people will go back and do their homework and then come back together. Maybe they do it through meditation. They might do it through counseling or psychiatry. There's many venues out there in the path of healing. And as the healing occurs in each person's life, there's more ability to relate and to respond rather than to react.
So that's a beautiful way to soften it, is to actually be self-reflective.
Yes. And also to ask questions, because it's so easy to misunderstand one another.
Yes.
Do you remember what you said when you said, most men will say, no, I don't remember. Mm-hmm. And they don't, and yet, my wife remembered, do you remember what you said when you said, and I said, so, well, now that you mention it, yes. What did you mean by that? And so men are not wordy, right? The average man speaks 12,000 words a day, while the average woman speaks 30. So men are not always super expressive.
Right.
But I know with my wife, significant other, she wants more words than, how you doing today? Oh, good. That doesn't tell her anything. Well, what makes the day so good? So right. Going back to the original place of where the perceived offense is, and getting the true meaning of what actually happened, you'll find out that 90% of the time it was simply a misunderstanding.
Mm-hmm.
So our words are really important, that we weigh our words when we speak them to another and the tone in which we speak them in.
Yeah, I fully subscribe, and it took me a long time to get there. I fully subscribe to making generous assumptions. So not letting my past experience create a story before getting clarity about exactly what's going on in my relationship or the experience at hand. And instead making the assumption that that it wasn't malicious, or it didn't mean something that I'm reading a different way. I want to get clarity now as to what actually they meant, and then make a decision from that place instead. Can you see that as being something that is helpful in that dynamic of how different men and women are?
No, I really like what you just said, because that's the transition from the mind to the heart. The mind would just take the offense and would gather evidence like an attorney and make the person wrong and shut down. So that's the mind. So the beauty of the word you said, generous assumption, mm-hmm. That's the curiousness that opens the heart. Well, maybe that's not what the person meant. So I'm going to stay open and see what other possibilities are out there. And so that truly is the opening that you just spoke of.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So if anyone listening has found themselves, the curiosity to possibly listening to you this evening and us on this call, is that having a discussion about how to go from reactionship to relationship. So I think we have a clear understanding of what being in reactionship is, if we're bumping up, or I think you said earlier, pushing up against someone. How do we start to, the opening can be curiosity, but how do we start to make that transition from even having the awareness that we're operating more from our head and possibly past experience and allowing it to influence our present experience, to moving to a place of making decisions for ourselves and in engagement with others from a place of the heart?
Mm. Well, I just know that in relating, if we're living a lot in the past or the future, we're missing the present moment, what the present moment has to offer. The heart always considers love. The heart always considers kindness. The heart always considers gentleness. Whereas the mind does not have the capability. It does not know presence and does not know love. It's not actually the function of the mind, actually. It's just the primitive aspect of ourself where we're still transitioning from the mind to the heart. And so in the place of being that, in that place of love with self, intimate with self, it has to go inside, into me see. Is actually true intimacy. The deeper I am intimate and loving with myself, the more generous I can be with my assumptions with another. You know, and not assuming. The mind is like an attorney. It gathers information to prove its point, to hold a position. And when you hold a position in a relationship, the intimacy level is going to begin to subside.
Yes.
And, you know, and the romantic part of relationship begins to contract. And we're right back in the mind again. So that transition is really to pull back. I always say, like, before I say something to my wife, I know if I want to say something right away, I'm probably in reaction or, you know, but when I take the deep breath, and I'll say, Patricia, what did you really mean when you said that, so that I can be clear? And so I've opened the door just in my tone of voice. I didn't take it personal. See, when you go into the heart realm, when you hear something said, even if it's a slip or happens really quick, if you're not taking it personal, then the door is open for that other person, because you're in the present moment. You're holding the space for them to be able to respond to you.
Oh, I love that. Can you just say that one more time?
I don't know if I can, but because when it comes, you know, it's just like it's streaming. It's just that when you hold the space of presence.
Yeah, I love that.
It gives the other person the opportunity to actually say what they're feeling. And in a fast-moving pace society, how often do we really sit down with one another and say, how do you feel today? What was your day like? You know, wow, I really had a hard day, you know, like it was really hard to be so present. I worked a lot of hours. I says, wow, I really can hear that. What could I do in this moment to lighten that for you, or to be with you in this? Well, you know, and my wife usually just says, I just want to be heard. That's it.
I hear an audible sigh from everyone out there in the social universe. So it's having someone acknowledge what you've shared without the need to fix it, but providing an offer to how to comfort, or, as she said, and I think most women can agree that when we share things, we just want someone to hear us. We don't need anything fixed. So I love that dialogue there. That's so, so powerful.
Yeah, I like you brought that up, the word fix. You know, it's like I was an aircraft technician and a car mechanic for many, many years, and my job was fixing.
Right.
Fixing things.
Yeah.
So when I came home, the need to fix was so big. And it really got me in a lot of turmoil in my relationship, my need to fix. And when I discovered that my significant other was not broken and didn't need to be fixed, wow, did the relationship change. And so it's very critical. I don't know if there's any men on the line, but if there are men, it's so important for men to listen. And even if the emotional thing gets really big, just breathe and keep allowing, because the woman is just expressing. And as that happens, having your breath match their breath and looking in their eyes, allowing my woman to fully express, even if her arms are moving through the air and stuff, used to be when I left relationship. Not knowing that in the place of just allowing her to fully express and be with it and ride that big wave with her, when she was done, I said, oh my God, are you done? Is there anything else? No, I just want it to be heard. And she'll cry, and I hold her, and I've just created intimacy because she feels heard and seen. And so that's our opportunity to really connect with women. I call it being in the storm of the emotional body with a woman is a very precious place to be with your significant other. And that's what I teach men.
I love that.
Yeah.
And what a powerful skill to be able to learn and nurture, because I would think it just, it creates union. It creates co-union. Like it brings things together, because a lot of the time, especially when stuff becomes elevated, we've learned, so many of us, especially when we're little, if you think of like if your parents fought or if there was some sort of confrontation, people pull away instead of stepping forward. And if I understand you correctly, what you're encouraging people to do, men in this case in particular, but of course for women as well, is to just stand, to hold space.
Yes. And that's what I call the banks of the river. Like the emotional body of the woman actually is like the flow of the planet, the texture, the smell, the taste, you know, it's just like going shopping, right? Yeah, I would go with my wife and she had to touch everything in every rack. And, you know, and I'm saying, can't you just go in and get what you want, get 2 or 3 pairs so you don't have to come back for a couple of years? No, Bill, I'm enjoying this. Like, and I realized there's such a difference, you know, the flow.
Yeah.
And so in the place of where I'm holding and being the space for the expression of my significant other, I'm the banks for her to flow, to be all that she is as a woman. And in our universe, you know, we've had a lot of contraction between men and women over the centuries, and that is now beginning to heal, because we're taking the time really to, even like the people on this call tonight, this interview, are taking the time to actually open to this.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. And men are actually, believe it or not, are quite simple. If you go into a grocery store, no matter what woman it is that asks me, you know, there's some, oh, you know, I can't quite reach this. Almost every man will stop, and it's the pleasure of a man to reach up and get that box and say, here you go. And so where men, really what's big for men is appreciation.
Yeah, so true.
Appreciation is so important to men, whereas in what I've noticed with women is that it's so important to express their beauty, for me to express the beauty that I see.
We're getting lots of emoticons and love on the screen right now, so I just want to share those. Elle's watching, and
Hi, Elle.
obviously this content is resonating, and it looks like Patricia is on as well, sending her love and blessings, which is great. So I love when, what I love about it is the simplicity of it. That it doesn't need to be difficult, that if we can create the space to see and appreciate each other and appreciate the differences. So can you maybe share some of your wisdom about some more of the differences between men and women that you've seen through your work? So, because what I realized, even the work that I do, for example, I go out and I do my Connect Vancouver, and I sit down in discussion with both men and women about their dating experiences. And they both are wanting the same thing. They want that connection with another person. But they both are coming from different places and feeling like they're not being seen, understood, or heard. But they don't understand the challenges or the differences in the other sex, or potentially maybe even just the different energy. So can you speak to some of what those things are? Because once people hear them, there's a deeper level of compassion and understanding, and I find it really changes the conversation.
Well, one thing I've noticed is that women are very creative and expressive, whereas men are logical. And so men are logical, they're mostly grounded, And men like to empty out. It's like if you see a man in front of a TV set watching a football game or a hockey game, you know, they're in their little place of really emptying out. And when a woman comes in and talks to them, there's like, you know, it's like they don't want to be bothered because they're focused. So men have the ability to really focus.
Mm-hmm.
And whereas women are just more that creative flow and energy, where men just like, I go to the beach and I look at that line across the beach here in San Diego and it blue skies and clouds, and I'm emptying out. I'm saying, wow, this is good. I'm emptying out. Whereas the feminine is always taking everything in. They feel the movement, the taste, the color, the texture. Mm-hmm. They're just, the emotional range is like a rainbow, an infinite rainbow of expression of just being with this creative energy that just filling up. Like I notice when I'll have a shelf and I'll put one thing on it. It looks very sterile, very clean. And I realized when Patricia came in, there was stuff all over my shelf. There were like 4 or 5 objects on the shelf. So this is her filling up, right? Mm-hmm. Bringing her creativity into the room. And so it's quite a transition for men to accept and to be with the flow of that and being open to the flow of the feminine. And one of the things I really noticed, it's so important, trust. In all of this, you know, when we first come together in a relationship, there is protection. There might be romantic, you know, infatuation or whatever it is that this created that spark. And yet when things come together too quickly, they go apart equally as quick. Mm. And I think when we're coming into a new relationship, it's good to kind of like when you turn the kettle on, to just let it come up to the time when it's time to boil rather than start at the boiling point. Allow it to build, kind of like building the bridge is a plank at a time as you come into a relationship and you begin to trust, you begin to feel into, begin to discover each other. And so you just build that bridge of trust. And that's the main thing that I noticed, that what I've noticed with women in relating is the pushing into to see, can this man be trusted with my life? And if it's a serious enough or significant relationship, is this the man that I could be with possibly for the rest of my life? Is this the man? And so I find that women will push into that and see if a man is trustworthy.
Yeah, so Patricia has asked, can we talk about trust? And Tina is acknowledging her for that. I also want to acknowledge that Laura has weighed in, and she says, when we stand and hold space for another instead of trying to blame or lash out is when healing can take place.
Yeah, well, the propensity in our humanity to blame or to lash out is only the place that we haven't taken care of our own pain and we've done our own work. So it's so important really to take a look inside of self, and, you know, with the ability to respond, that's where the healing begins, because we're a reflection of something. When we come together with another, we're reflecting something. Mm-hmm. And of course, it's so easy to think it's the other person. You know, so when we realize that's one thing, as you begin to do your work and to heal, you know, it's not about the other person.
Can you speak about that? You come to know that a little bit more, though, Bill, because that might be a leap for some people.
Oh, okay. Well, I can only relate to it from my own experience. I remember one day I was leaving from Vancouver, going to a workshop in Olympia. And my wife had to work all night, and it was hard for her to get up. So we started later. So we ended up with a 2-hour border wait. And then we got into Washington. I thought, oh, this is going to be easy. And we ended up in another 2-hour border wait. And I was beginning to get really angry. And I wanted to blame Patricia for this. And the need was so strong. You know, she said, what's going on? I says, I'm so angry with you right now because she says, man, I didn't get home till 5 in the morning. You wanted me to get up at 7. And yet that anger was just boiling in my chest. And I knew in my heart, I says, I know this is not about you, but something is wanting to come up. And the strangest thing came up where at an old place where I was offended deeply was an old childhood wound that came up in that moment. Mm. So the need to do our own personal healing is really important, because we have no idea what's brewing in the unconscious state of being that has yet to be discovered or healed. And as that came up, I was able to fully release the anger, which had nothing to do with her, absolutely nothing. And I was sure it was her. And, we were able to really, through that, create intimacy again at another level. But it really showed me the need inside, if we're unhealed or we haven't done our work, the need to blame can end relationships, and it has nothing to do with the other person.
So I love something you said earlier about before going into reaction, taking that breath and maybe getting reflective or curious, like you just explained in your story, where that was originating from. And, Patricia had mentioned earlier about that establishment of trust. I know for myself, if someone was to take a breath and say, okay, what's coming up for this? And then be able to take responsibility for it, not always the most popular of words, but take responsibility for it and get curious and possibly share it with me so I can support them in holding the space while they go through with that discovery. I would feel so much closer and more connected and safe with that person, instead of feeling like, which I think, unfortunately happens more often than not, where we end up walking on eggshells.
Right.
People are in reaction.
Yeah. Well, the thing about walking on eggshells, the real truth about that too, there's some gravity to this, is that if you're uncomfortable with anger and say somebody's in reaction, there's still a place that you're uncomfortable with it yourself. Mm-hmm. So in my life of transmuting tons of anger, I think I was born angry, came out angry, and it made me very successful for a long time until I had to face it. Right. Is I definitely took it out on others until I realized the one person I was really hurting was me.
It was you. Yeah.
Yeah. And when I saw that, I knew I had come to the end of the rope of that, and I needed to make a change in order to attract something differently. Because even in the place where I held the anger and was in a lot of reactionships, I knew after a while it had to be somebody else besides another person. It had to be about me.
Yeah. Us being the common denominator in all of our reactionships.
Yeah. And the beauty of Patricia and the work that we both have done together and on ourselves individually is that my need to, I says, God, I just want to blame you so much. And I'm so angry with you. And yet I know it's not about you. And I took a breath. She put her hand over my heart and just said, breathe a little bit deeper. And then my emotional body moved, and there was such an opening, and it was beautiful that we had that connection. Mm-hmm. Again, if a relationship is not growing in intimacy, then it's growing another direction.
Oh, say that one more time too, Bill, will you please?
When we're not growing together intimately, it's growing in another direction. So all of these experiences, when reaction comes up, it's going to come up no matter who you are, how much work you do. There's always going to be something in our humanity is going to come up. It's just, will we take the time and take that breath? Taking the breath is the gap or the opportunity when spirit comes in, God, the intelligence, whatever you want to call the energy. And it's that gap that gives you the ability to open to something else.
I love that.
Because if you're responding right away, it's just the mind coming in, trying to fix this, to manage it, to move it around. Yeah, so very true.
So let's circle back around, although it's certainly the underlying thread in all of this conversation, about trust and where trust really originates from in the development of a relationship.
Well, in relationship, when you come into a relationship, you have to come in clean. And what I mean by clean is not having a back door. You know, some people come into, I'll go and I'll only go so far. And if that doesn't work, I'll jump to the next person, you know? So there's always that underlying current of where, you know, there's really not a commitment. You know, it takes time to really see and to be with another, to really begin to, it takes a couple of years actually just to barely get to know somebody. And then you'll start seeing what's really moving in another's life. And if it's something you can be with, then you can start building that bridge of trust. Of course, you know, in the couple of years that you're together, that's part of what's happening. You're checking the other person out to see if they're punctual or if they're late or if they show up or they do what they say they're going to do. And all of these things. And if there's respect and appreciation, it's a constant looking in to see if that person can be trusted. And I know what really catapulted me into trust is when I was working with my wife and she looked in my eyes and we were sitting together. She says, Bill, I want to tell you something as a man. I trust you. And you know what? It scared me. It scared the daylights out of me. I says, oh my God, she trusts me. I better really step up to the plate and be that trustworthy. And it, you know, I never had that spur until she said that to me. I trust you. I felt it was almost like a passage in our relationship of where she had checked in and pushed into me enough to see if I was trustworthy. She had children, so I came in with her children, wanted to see if I could be trusted with her children. And so all of these things were a continual testing to see if I was trustworthy. So there came a point where she felt that and said it to me. And then it was like almost like a sacred movement in our relationship. And if there was anything open, it was all closed in that moment. I said, wow, trust was so big for me. And I looked back in her eyes and said, I trust you. And we just both had big smiles. And I really feel that's what's solidified our relationship is trust.
Yeah, I can. That's so. It's almost like the foundational building blocks, I would think, of any relationship, because you can have all the other colorful words to describe things that are enjoyable in a relationship or when you're sharing yourself with another person. But if there is an undertone of distrust, or you don't know that you can count on them, then you're not fully opening to the experience. Do you think that's fair to say? I mean, you talk about work through opening of the heart. If trust isn't the foundation, that's a challenge.
Well, you know, it's interesting too, because 80% of what we see or feel about another is actually unspoken. So we're constantly intuiting into each other and feeling into the other being to see who this person really is. And when this person is consistent, shows up on time, you find that person trustworthy, and you discover that, it really accelerates growth in relationship when you know you can trust the other. Because then you can really bring, when trust is there, it's really the bridge to a deeper intimacy. Without trust, you know, how can a woman fully give herself or surrender to the man if there's no trust? Or very little trust? How can that woman truly, fully surrender into her man?
Is trust different for men than it is for women? Does it show up in different ways? Do you think?
That's a good question. I'm really not sure on that one. I would say, how do you feel? Just, I mean, just out of you experiencing, I mean, how important is that, you know, I mean.
Trust is huge. For me, trust translates to someone that I know really it's a reliability thing. It's them staying within their own integrity, upholding and honoring not only their boundaries and mine, that I know that I can trust them to do that, that they're accountable for themselves, and also that I can count on them to, if need be, bring me to awareness of being accountable for myself, and that I trust them that that's safe to have that conversation.
Yeah, I would say it's the same for men. And I just know how important that's been with me and my wife, because we work with a lot of people and we do a lot of heart work, and just we're so connected. Nothing can shake our relationship in the movement of all the people we work for, because when people feel love, they're really attracted to it. When they see light, they're really attracted to it. And being new, some people think that's the light, that's what I've been wanting. And so we're so clear in our relationship. And my wife has said to me, I trust you with my life. It's awesome and scary in the same moment, because I'm saying, wow, man, I better look. Is there anywhere I start looking in myself, is there anything I can improve on, or what can I open to next? When somebody trusts you with their life, that's like huge.
That's enormous.
Yeah.
So but I love that you step into, how can I connect to this more deeply? Whereas for some people, they might think, that's a lot of responsibility.
Well, like I said, the word responsibility carries a lot of, it's very spring loaded.
Yes.
So I like to retranslate that into a softer English.
Great.
And saying, really, it's our ability to respond in life. Is it really responsibility? It's almost like it's someone else doing it. And when you say I have the ability, or you have the ability to respond, you're actually in the action of that ability to respond in life.
No, that's lovely.
It really brings you into seeing it in a different light.
Yeah, thank you for repurposing that for me.
Yeah.
Tina says this is really resonating for her. It's coming across at the best time, so that's wonderful. Tina, I am so grateful that is of service to you. I mean, we all come upon each other at certain times, I feel, for at the right time for the right reasons, to hear certain things that we need to, that can shift us or open us more deeply to what we're wanting in life. Laura mentions earlier, you can lose trust and then rebuild again. It's hard work, but it can happen. Do you want to speak to that, Bill?
Oh, that's kind of a really good one, but it's also a funny one, because women and men are so differently related to trust.
Okay.
And, just take it on the light side, is like, I can do something for 365 days in a row perfectly. And on 366, I messed up. My wife says, you really messed up when you did such and such. And I say, yeah, I did. But what about the other 365 days I didn't?
Right.
So women have a different type of memory system related to those things.
Okay.
And I know when trust is violated, especially, let's just say on the part of a man, it takes a lot to build that trust again. So trust, it can be rebuilt, and you just have to find where the trust went off, what happened there, what was the cause, get curious about it, what happened there. But trust, it can be rebuilt. It is hard work, and it can happen. I agree with Laura on that comment. And you can lose trust, but it takes something to lose it. It has some action on somebody's part to lose it.
Yes, of course. Now you mention sort of relationally to women. How is it for men then?
Well, men, what I've noticed is women seem to be a lot more stronger emotionally than men. And so I think men, when there's been a trust violation, take it more personally. It's just been my observation. And trust can be rebuilt. Whenever there's an issue with trust, it's really important to bring it up right away, because if you just shuffle it under the carpet, you'll be shuffling other things under, and every chip in a relationship related to trust or anything begins to gnaw away at our intimacy. So whenever there's any type of issue coming up, it has to be looked at right away and really dialogued and really brought to the table, and the ability to respond to it. And most of the time, honestly, it's just a misunderstanding, a misinterpretation of what another has said. And sometimes people are speaking from their own pain body. So sometimes the pain is talking rather than what's really happening inside, underneath the pain.
So to bring it back around to then stepping into practices that support a relationship in a circumstance such as that, can you offer some guidance as to how a couple can navigate their way towards relationship instead of being in reactionship when a circumstance such as that happens?
Well, like I said, any type of issue in a relationship needs to be addressed, no matter how minute. How minute. It may seem minute, but, you know, anthills can become mountains in relationship. So you want to get it at the anthill stage rather than the mountain size, because that's a little bit hard to dissolve and to take care of. So I just say address it right away. And there always has to be, you know, you can make what I call the rules of the game in relationship. You know, that there has to be a time where people sit down and each person needs to be heard. And when the other person is holding the space and being there with them, not to respond back or try to correct or to fix or say you should have done this, but let the person fully express really what they wanted to say and really sit with it. Be present with them. Even if it's hard to listen and it's hard, at least look like it, like you're really doing your best. And in that dialogue, there's always an opening, and people can share their deepest feeling. Oh God, I didn't know you felt that way. I really feel bad now. I really misjudged the situation. I thought it was something else. And so in the place of being responsible or the ability to respond, find out what the other person's actually feeling. Take the time to do that and fully listen. Let them get it out. Because if they don't get it out, it's going to come out anyway in the form of a lash out or some form of anger or resentment.
Yeah.
Now, this is really important. I wanted to address this in getting it out, but it's also so important to be very clear in your heart and not say yes to something when you mean no. And vice versa, you know. Let your yes be firm and your no be no, and stay with it, because this is about you. And when you're very clear with that yes and no, your heart becomes very clear because you're clear with yourself. Your heart's not afraid, because of it, you know, trust actually begins in our own hearts. When we can trust self, we can trust another. And when we trust self, we'll also see when somebody is not trustworthy.
Oh, so true. So knowing that you have your own back and that you'll uphold your own standards and boundaries, what's right and wrong for you, that's huge.
It always comes back to self, actually.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, always comes back to self. And that's so important, no matter what you're doing, if it's an opinion, a position you're holding, a judgment of another, bring it back to self and see where it is in you. And if you sit with it long enough, you'll discover, wow, that was really about me. And that's when people start to have the ability, wow, when I said what I said to you last night, I really didn't mean that. I would just really, I had a bad day at work and I had a person that really bothered me and I was really angry with him and it came out on you. I'm really sorry that you didn't deserve that. So really, it's just that humility with surrender and the willingness to communicate. And that is the benefits of really going to the heart. Everything we've talked about, the benefits is more intimacy, more love, more connection. And in that place together, you can really create the life that you've always been wanting. Yeah.
Yeah.
The
So
heart realm is delicious as you heal and move past the contractions of life and really have the ability to respond with yourself and with others.
so very, very true.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. I want to open up the floor. Everyone that's been watching has been great and engaging, but if you had any specific questions or something you wanted us to touch on before I ask Bill my final three questions that I finish each Love Talks with,
Mm.
now's the time. So feel free to weigh in. You want to take advantage of Bill being available to you. And I will share at the end of the broadcast how you can connect with both himself and his wife, Patricia, if you're interested in doing more deep heart opening work with them. Did anyone have any questions at all? And while we're opening the floor up to them to ask any questions, Bill, is there anything that you really you most desire for people to take away from tonight's conversation?
Well, I really feel everybody on the call. It's just there's so many lovely hearts in our world that are so willing to open to this. Just be the love that you already are. We don't have to look for it outside of self. That's where many of us have looked and have been so disappointed through our lifetime, is looking outside of self. Really find the love that's already there. And when you find that, there's really no more seeking. You just spend your life opening to the love, and it's like a flower that blossoms as the sun comes up in the morning. The flower just blossoms and opens to receive. And this is our purpose here on the planet, is really truly to come to know and to love self.
I love that. I love that. That's a lovely, lovely message to part with. Well, I'll leave the floor still open to anyone if a question pops up. But in the meantime, with just a few minutes left in our call, I like to ask each guest three questions. And my first one is, I would love for you to share three things that you are most grateful for, gratitude being a powerful way to step in and embrace love in our lives.
Well, I'm grateful for all the people, my family, my friends, all those I've met through this work, the beautiful people on the planet that I've come to know. I'm so grateful for every one of my friends and all those that God has put in my life to love the opportunity. I love the planet. I love people. And I'm thankful for every heartbeat, every breath, to really spend our time wisely here on the planets, knowing that every moment, every heartbeat is so precious to each one of us. Really enjoy the pleasure of life.
I love that.
Yeah.
Love that. Can you speak to what you believe is most true? It can be in life in general or for you right now. What you believe to be your biggest truth or to be the most true?
Boy, that's a big question. That's a good one, Andrea. That one's got me really going deep here. I just know that the realm of the heart, when we begin to experience, it is the infinite space in my being, the truth I feel. The inside of me is as vast as the outer world that I see with my human eye. We have so much, I have so much space to open to so much more possibility when there's a landing place for God, for energy, for divinity to land in my heart. Mm. Everything is possible. Everything's possible in that space. We've barely begun to tap into the heart in our humanity. There is so much more available for us in the space of the heart.
So true. I fully believe that as well. Thank you.
My deepest truth, I would say, is that love is true and it's real and it's comfortable, it's lovely, it's blessed, it's sacred.
Sacred indeed.
Yeah.
Well, you couldn't have transitioned more beautifully to my last question, which is, what does love mean to you?
Love is when I look into the other eyes of another and I see the God in them. I see the beauty in them. And when I look in the mirror and I see the beauty in myself and the love that I am, that's what I feel love is. In my human words, it's really doesn't do love justice.
Mhm.
And that's what love is to me. It's everything. It's the most important thing in my life. It's actually what keeps our world safe. In the appearing world of unsafe, love is still stronger than that which we view on a TV set. Love will always take you home. Love will always invite you to your deepest truth.
Mhm.
Your deepest truth will always come from your own heart.
Yeah, so very true. Thank you for that. Now, I'm first and foremost so grateful for you being on the call this evening and sharing your infinite wisdom. I could probably talk to you till through the evening until tomorrow morning and still not run out of things to discuss. But I'm very grateful for you being on tonight and sharing your wisdom with the listeners and for anyone that will watch the replay. This will be available on the event page, and also I will be sharing it on YouTube. So if tonight's message resonates with you, please share it. I believe that it's a very important one. Lots of people struggle in relationship when they don't need to. So I think a lot of what people learn tonight can help them in that transition to a more loving and fulfilling place. Now, Bill, anyone that watches the video and would like to either learn more about you or possibly attend one of your wonderful retreats or events, can you share quickly how they can find you? We will share links after, but it would be great for you to articulate that now.
Yeah, it's www.evolutionoftheheart.com. And it has all the information where we're going to be, what we do, who we are, our bios. We have a little 2-minute video up front that talks about what we do. And so you'll find all the information there. And there's a phone number there, and you can call anytime.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And I know you and Patricia are very busy. She's somewhere else on the planet than where you are right now.
Yes.
So do you want to share where you will be next? They may not necessarily be able to join the retreats that are already in motion, but it'll be lovely for people to know what you are up to in the very future.
Okay. Well, we just finished a one day in Olympia, Washington. My wife is doing a wonderful ladies retreat in near Seattle, Paulsboro, across from Seattle. Very beautiful place. And she'll finish up on Sunday. Monday, we'll be packing. We're heading to Bali to do a week retreat in Bali. So that's our next adventure. If there's any late comers, we still have a couple spots.
Lovely.
And it's going to be a beautiful opening and place to be.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for the gift that you are to this world and to all of us this evening. I want to say thank you to everyone that watched tonight. Continue with the conversation. Weigh in the comments. I'm for sure will respond. And if you have a question for Bill, I will alert him and have him weigh in as well. Thank you so much, everybody. And Bill, thank you so much again.
Thank you too, Andrea. Thank you for inviting me. It was so much fun to be with you and all your guests online and those that I know. God bless you all.
Wonderful. My pleasure. Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.